I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast. It is Tuesday. We are back second day in a row talking running backs second day in a row. But second day in a row, we also have some interesting injury news. Dennis, it broke a little bit late yesterday. Kyle Shanahan said they are targeting week 6 for the return for Brandon Aiyuk. I think that's a little later than many people had hoped. That makes me a little more trepidatious about his 2025 fantasy season. How does it make you feel?
You know, I was a little nervous already. You know, Shanahan can be kind of shady with his injury reports, as we've seen with Christian McCaffrey. So I think right now you're drafting Brandon Aiyuk at your peril. I mean, it could be week 6, 7, could be week 12, it could be the playoffs. You know, I don't know. He's set up to have a great opportunity. They moved Debo. I think this makes keeping Jauan Jennings happy even a bigger priority. You know, Ricky Pearsall, they spent a first-round pick. They obviously believe in him. I'm probably targeting George Kittle. You know, I think we did tight ends already. I think I had him as my tight end 1. Yeah. And some of that was due to the Brandon Aiyuk injury news and Jennings' unhappiness and Pearsall's dinged up, Demarcus Robinson's pending court case. So there are a lot of different things in San Francisco that could end up being nothing and work themselves out just fine. I think the biggest thing is if Christian McCaffrey can stay healthy, everything will be all right in San Francisco. But if he gets injured, and then it comes down to can Isaac Guerendo and Jordan James carry the load and be effective? And we've seen lots of tailbacks be effective in that offense, but not a lot of tailbacks are Christian McCaffrey. So I would be very hesitant to draft Brandon Aiyuk early enough that he would be taking up, quote unquote, a starting position in my draft order.
Yeah, so last year he had 47 targets, caught 25 passes for 374 yards, no touchdowns. Based on this latest injury outlook, ESPN's projecting for this year, which should be Mike Clay, 54 targets, 34 receptions, 528 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That's maybe wide receiver 4.
Yeah, and that's season. Like week 10 or 11 returning, right? If you had to guess based on, you know, what, 54 targets?
I don't know, because he played 7 or 8 games last year before he got hurt and had only 47 targets. I think the thing is, too, like if you don't come back till mid to late October and it takes you a while to get going and ingratiate yourself, I mean, the 49ers, if the running game's going, are not the most pass-heavy team. So I definitely think that puts a little bit of a damper, especially for redraft. He might be a guy I'm kind of staying away from because where I've seen him go in mocks and things like that, we'll see if it settles more because of injury news, but it's more like the 7th or 8th round. I think that's a little too exciting for a player who might not do anything for you till December.
Right.
Brevin Jordan placed on season-ending IR, so kind of ends his season. He would have been like tight end maybe 2, 3, or 4 for the Texans. Jordan Love having a left thumb procedure will not play the rest of the preseason, though they think he may return to practice in a week or two. They're hoping to have him back for week 1. That is not his throwing hand, but I feel like that's somewhat concerning.
Yeah, I am definitely, you don't need your left hand to throw, but you do need your left hand often to brace yourself when you're getting knocked down. And having a surgery on a tendon in your left thumb could be problematic. We may finally get to see why some called Malik Willis the best quarterback in that draft. But I don't know. This moves Jordan Love down the board for me a little bit. I mean, he was probably a high-end QB2. Maybe I'm pushing him down to QB 18, QB 20 at this point, just because I want to see him healthy. And their receiving core has a lot of questions, even though they spent a first-round pick on Matthew Golden. Romeo Doubs dinged up again, and maybe he's a Jag plus. He's certainly one of the more consistent receivers they have. Christian Watson can't stay healthy. Dontavian Wicks, inconsistent hands. Jayden Reed banged up again. It seems
walking boot again.
Yeah, it seems Tucker Kraft is really the receiving target you want to get there. The biggest foe, I think, for the Green Bay receivers is Josh Jacobs. They're plenty willing to give him, 300 plus carries, and he's got to have to take it. And it doesn't look like those backups are any real threat to him. I had some hopes for Marshawn Lloyd. He got banged up again already. The other two guys, Chris Brooks and Emmanuel Wilson, they're good backups. I don't think you want to rely on either one of them for long stretches and a lot of carries.
Well, they have Marshawn Lloyd back there too. So
yeah, but he's banged up again. He's missed a couple practices.
Yeah. We're talking about practice. Pull out my Allen Iverson. I don't worry about that yet, but it was confirmed today. Rondale Moore season-ending injury was placed on IR. We talked about that a little bit yesterday. One I forgot to put on the sheet, but that you had sent me right after the show. Your friend Myles Garrett there posted for going 100 miles an hour in a 60 mile per hour zone. We know Shedeur had some speed trap issues. Do you think this is any cause for concern?
I don't. So there wasn't an accident. He got a ticket for going 40 miles over the speed limit. He's going to pay a fine. He's going to get points on his license. The league and the team are going to be like, look, man, why you gotta do that shit? I don't think it portends a suspension or anything like that. I think it shows maybe some questionable decision making. I think the bigger I saw this on Facebook yesterday or today that Shedeur Sanders was saying, hey, I'd like to maybe see you feel that swipe you have just one time. And I'm like, now talk about poor decision making. There's nothing in my being that looks at Miles Sanders and says, you know what? I'd like to have that guy tackle me once.
Maybe he was, he was trying to get Dylan Gabriel to volunteer. Yeah, and see what happened.
Maybe. I'm curious to see. Gabriel's supposed to start the game this week.
Yeah.
Not that
It's supposed to just kind of be the two of them. They said Pickett and Flacco aren't going to play, so
it'll be interesting to see. I want to see if Gabriel, there have been mixed reports on Gabriel and Sanders, depending on who you talk to. Either one of them are winning training camp. But overall, I think Shedeur played well last week. I think there were certainly some things he left on the table. And, for me, I'm not sure that if either one of them becomes the outright starter, has a vice-like grip, I don't think either one of them, look to me like they're the next Brock Purdy that come from late in the draft and latch onto a
as Nick
locked-in.
Mackay once famously said, there are no winners here.
Yeah.
That's probably the mantra of the Browns, but I will be curious to see him out there to see, what we get, in terms of performances. And it's curious to me if Pickett's healthy that he's not playing, because does that mean they have already decided where they're going to keep him? If they were going to try to trade him, you think they'd want to get something on tape? I don't know.
No, I think they may keep 4 QBs going into the season. I think they like the comfort of the 2 veterans and the optimism of the 2 rookies. So it'll theoretically be a waste of a roster spot, and I don't think you can put either of those rookies through waivers to get them on the practice squad. I think somebody nabs whichever one you put out there.
Yeah. I mean, theoretically, it could be a waste of 4 roster spots, but I guess we'll see. Last bit of news, James Cook, they have not settled his contract dispute, but his hold-in, he started out when he was at camp practicing, participating in everything. Then he did kind of a hold-in for a week, and now he's back out there practicing again. Josh Allen said some real nice things about having him back on the field. Does this make you more or less encouraged?
It makes me more encouraged, especially in leagues where I'd like to trade him. He is the best back in Buffalo, but he wants to be paid like a bell cow, and I don't think he's bell cow material. I think he's a receiving back with good, like if he weighed 212, 215, he's a good inside runner. He just doesn't have the heft to hold up to the battering that you get running between the tackles 18 times a game. And so I think that's using him like that would be a waste of his skills and ability. Unfortunately, if you can't give him that kind of volume, you can't pay him like a bell cow. So, will they get something done? I would expect so. It'll probably make neither one of them happy, which is the best kind of deal. But if I'm looking to move him, getting him back in camp definitely makes that easier.
Well, that is a perfect segue. We are continuing to talk about running backs today. We are going to do our top 25 redraft rankings. So, Dennis, if you look on the sheet, I put the color ribbon through 25 where we're starting, and the color ribbon through 14 where I would like you to stop. So go through 14. If you want to give us your first chunk, this is approximately what we think is going to be running back 2.
All right. So I got James Cook at 25, the aforementioned. For me, Cook ends up, I don't think he repeats last year's touchdown production. And for me, he's going to need that because he's not going to get enough rushing volume. Ray Davis is a much more compact and solidly built running back. Ty Johnson's a little bigger. And then you've got Josh Allen, who takes a lot of the carries for the tough yards. And so I just think it's risky to count on Cook to have another, 16, 18 touchdown season year. I've got RJ Harvey at 24. this kind of pairs with my J.K. Dobbins 37 ranking. I think Harvey will start off the season as the 1B or RB2 in Denver, but I think his youth and ability will allow him to kind of take the lead spot away from J.K. Dobbins as the season moves on. A lot of it's going to come down to, can Harvey do the pass protection? If he can pick up the pass protection scheme, I think he'll be able to steal some snaps away from J.K. Dobbins. But I think Harvey is the more dynamic back at this point due to Dobbins' injuries. So they drafted him high. They like him. I think Sean Payton has a plan for that backfield, and he wasn't happy with what he saw from Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, Audric Estime, that cast of characters from last year. At 23, I got Aaron Jones. He's going to be matched up with Jordan Mason, and they're openly talking about preserving Jones, not giving him as heavy a workload. I like Aaron Jones. I think as long as he's healthy, he can be very productive on 12 to 14 touches. He's a really good pass catcher, nose for the end zone. He's a shorter back, but he's stocky. He's one of those 5'9", 5'10", 209-pounders. But he's got good tackle breaking ability and can get in the end zone. But he will be splitting time with Jordan Mason. 22, I've got Isaiah Pacheco. For no other reason than who the hell else do they have? You know, they brought in Elijah Mitchell. They've got Brashard Smith, is it, I think? Kareem Hunt, or at least the carcass of Kareem Hunt.
Don't disrespect. He was their leading rusher last year.
But that was with Pacheco coming off the injury. Now, my big concern with Pacheco is, he's been described as he runs like he's mad at the earth. And I think that's an apt description. But if he stays healthy, he's improved his pass catching ability every season. Another year removed from the injury is going to kind of give some of his burst back. Maybe he's a little bit smarter runner. They do have probably more weapons in the passing game than they've had, the most weapons they've had since Tyreek Hill left, with Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy, and then old reliable Travis Kelce there. So they should be able to loosen up the offense, or the O-line pretty well, give him some room to operate. So I do like Isaiah Pacheco at 22. 21, I got David Montgomery. I've talked about it. I talked about it in yesterday's show with, who was that back? I forget who I described as Joe Mixon. And I think that David Montgomery is in danger of just dropping off a cliff. They've got Jahmyr Gibbs, who is 23 years old, 24 years old, dynamic runner, dynamic receiver. Gibbs and Montgomery have very, very clear roles. And
he turned 23 in March, so you are correct.
And so Montgomery is going to start the season with his role, but we've seen him not be afraid to defer to Gibbs. Like, there were drives where Gibbs would get the ball down and they'd go to send Montgomery in, and he's like, no, let the kid get his flowers and score this touchdown. And I think that's good for Montgomery from the standpoint of it's going to keep him healthier, but I think it ends up causing some of his production to fall off a little bit. Low end RB2, it's kind of where he's been. I think he's been in the high teens, around RB 18 to 20. I don't think it's going to be a precipitous drop, but he's one of those backs that never was known for his explosiveness. He's one of those guys that he wasn't going to turn a 10-yarder into a 90-yarder, but he would turn a 7-yarder into a 15-yarder. Great lateral movement. I think all of that is still present. Good pass catcher, but his role is that of the bruiser there. And I don't know that Detroit is necessarily going to be ahead like they were in past seasons. And so I think Gibbs will get a little more work. Number 20, I got Travion Henderson. I expect a timeshare between him and Ramondre Stevenson, with Henderson playing the Jahmyr Gibbs role and Stevenson playing the David Montgomery role. Henderson I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't break 180 carries, but he also catches 60 passes. So his explosiveness showed in his first preseason game, 100-yard touchdown return on a kickoff, 18-yard burst on his only carry. I'm expecting a great season from him if he can stay healthy. I do get a little nervous about him carrying too heavy of a workload because he does have a little bit of a history of soft tissue injuries. 19, I got James Conner, another guy who is, one of the graybeards. And right now he's lined up to be another year of bell cow RB1, though he's talking a lot about how they need to get Trey Benson involved, and Benson looks great. And I'm not afraid to let Benson run the ball because it's all about this team winning. I like James Conner. I think he's a good value in redraft leagues. But again, he's a guy, if I'm in a dynasty league, I'm trying to get out of the business. Number 18, DeAndre Swift. Doesn't have a ton of competition for touches. They've got Kyle Monangai and Roschon Johnson. Johnson hasn't proven a whole heck of a lot yet, but he's looked decent in preseason now. Monangai looked good this week, but I don't expect either one of them to be a real big threat to DeAndre Swift. I think as long as Swift can stay healthy, Ben Johnson's going to use him. All we heard when Ben Johnson went to Chicago was, he hates DeAndre Swift. And then they went out and didn't really address the running back position. Well, maybe he doesn't hate DeAndre Swift that much. Or maybe he looks around and he's like, well, I've got Colston Loveland, I've got DJ Moore, I've got Rome Odunze, I've got Cole Kmet, I've got Olamide Zaccheaus. I am not going to have to rely that much on DeAndre Swift, but I think Swift is going to have probably the best year of his career this year. Number 17, Chuba Hubbard. Again, another guy I think is going to be a good, solid running back, signed to a contract extension. I'm a little nervous about Rico Dowdle cutting into his workload a little bit. I think Dowdle is definitely an upgrade over the backups that have been in Carolina the last couple years. Second year in the Dave Canales offense, they like Chuba Hubbard. I think he's going to be solid. What it'll come down to is, as long as they don't get super pass happy, they got drafted Teteroa McMillan, Xavier Legette, Jalen Coker, Adam Thielen. They've got some weapons in the passing game, and as long as they don't all of a sudden decide to start throwing the ball 40 times a game, I think Chuba Hubbard's going to be just fine. Number 16, Omarion Hampton. I think that the Chargers are going to be a slow-pace team this year. I was already high on Hampton, and while I expect him to split time, I'm not as concerned of him splitting time with Hassan Haskins as I am with Najee Harris. And Najee wasn't really a world beater to begin with. He was, a plotter, a thumper. I think Hampton's going to have a good year, but I don't think it's going to be, I expect the Chargers to be in the bottom third in plays ran. And so Hampton will get some good volume. He'll have plenty of opportunity to produce, and he'll be the lead dog in that offense. They're going to start the year with a larger shared workload, but I think by week 3, they're going to be like, let's just give the ball to this guy when we run it. Number 15, I got Alvin Kamara. Feels like it could be too high. Feels like it could be too low. Depends on how I'm feeling at the time. Kamara could bounce back with another 80 reception season in this Kellen Moore offense. But who knows with the quarterback situation there. The last few seasons, they've switched to him running the ball a lot more. But now they've gotten rid of Dennis Allen, who seemed to hate Kendre Miller. They did bring in Devin Neal out of Kansas, who's a good pounder back, another early down back. But I think I'm going to be good with Alvin Kamara as an RB2 until Alvin Kamara shows me he's not an RB2. And then my last running back in this group, Breece Hall. I got Hall at 14. He's got some good backups behind him, but I think now another year away from that injury, I think his explosiveness is going to be back. They don't seem to be interested in extending him. And so I think they're not going to be worried about injuring him again. But if he comes out and plays well, I think we may see a Chuba Hubbard situation where they weren't really, I don't think the Panthers were like, oh, well, we've definitely got to re-sign Hubbard going into that season. And then Hubbard balled out, and they're like, you know what? We should probably really bring this guy back. It wouldn't surprise me a bit if that happened with Breece Hall. I don't think he's going to catch a ton of passes, even though he's a pretty good pass catcher, because Justin Field at quarterback is not a guy that uses his running backs in the passing game a lot. It'll be interesting to watch how the Tanner Eggstrom offense evolves from his time in Detroit under Ben Johnson. But Breece Hall is a pretty dynamic running back.
So for me, at 25, I have Javonte Williams for Dallas. Rico Dowdle got quite a bit of run and quite a bit of opportunity last year, ended up going for more than 1,000 yards. We have not heard anything really about or from Miles Sanders in camp, and he didn't do much the last 2 years when he was with Carolina, so I don't think he's a big factor. The only things we've heard about Jadon Blue are some digs at his work ethic. I still think he'll have a role, but Javonte Williams did well with what he was given in Denver, ended up as RB30 last year. So I think can be right in this range with volume in Dallas. I have RJ Harvey like you at running back 24. There was a lot of bemoaning when the Denver's first depth chart came out and he was listed as RB5. But if you watch the first preseason game where they started their starters and played them into the second quarter, RJ Harvey was clearly the starting running back and took most of the carries. Dobbins came in obvious passing situations, probably would come in a 2-minute offense because he's a better blocker, being a more veteran player. But I think Harvey's going to get plenty of run. People that were panicking don't really understand that Sean Payton typically on all of his early depth charts defers to veterans, even veterans who are new to the team over rookies. This time last year, Bo Nix was listed as QB3 behind Zach Wilson, and no one thought he was going to end up as QB3 behind Zach Wilson. So I think Harvey going to be just fine. I have James Conner at running back 23. He's been very solid. He could be better than this again this year if he stays healthy again. But there's been a lot more rumbling about what people like when they've seen Trey Benson. We thought Benson would potentially start to take over a role last year. Didn't really happen, but now in year 2, I think that may start to get a bigger role. I have Amarion Hampton at 22. I think he's probably going to be their lead back there. I like him. I think the Chargers offense may have a little bit more problem. That Rashawn Slater injury is no joke. They have some issues. What?
Bad.
They have some issues. I'm not as high on the Chargers this year as where they finished last year. I have Aaron Jones at running back 21. I think he's going to be pretty solid. I like Jordan Mason to be a contributor there. Jones seems to fit what they were doing. they were very committed to signing him, made sure they signed him back before the free agency period began. I have David Montgomery at running back 20. I listened to what you said, but he played the first 15 games last year. Do you want to guess where he stood in fantasy rankings through 15 weeks?
Tony Pollard?
No, David Montgomery.
RB20?
He was running back 12.
Oh, okay.
Through until he got injured. And he only dropped into the teens because he missed the last 3 games. He had 185 carries in 14 games. Touchdowns, a big part of it, but I think they like their dynamic duo. And honestly, Jahmyr Gibbs ended up with 250 carries and about 70 targets. I don't think they want to give him more touches than that. So I guess it depends on how much worse that offense gets, whether or not Montgomery's role gets slashed down. I have Tony Pollard at 19, I think in part because he and Calvin Ridley are the only reliable parts of a Tennessee offense. And also in part because they have nothing behind him. Tyjae Spears seems to constantly get injured. Maybe they'll add another body, but he was very effective in that role. I think he will be effective again. I have Ken Walker at running back 18. He could potentially go higher. I like Zach Charbonnet more than Dennis does. I also think Walker has missed games every year he's been there. He's another guy that just can't stay healthy through the poundings. And I think that lowers him a little bit for me. I have DeAndre Swift at 17. You have to wonder if Ben Johnson was like, I don't want this guy. I got rid of him in Detroit, moves to head coach, has him again, and is like, obviously God is sending me a sign, and I need to work with what I've been given. But Swift was good there last year. He stayed healthy the last couple of years. He had a very dynamic year when he went to Philadelphia. I thought he was very good there. And then he was very good in kind of the dumpster fire offense that they had going through 3 or 4 different coordinators last year in Chicago. I think he'll do just fine. I have Chuba Hubbard at 16. I like him. I like what they're doing there. I think Dowdle is definitely a strong number 2. They have Trevor Etienne, who's an interesting depth back. Jonathan Brooks, we know, is not going to play at all this year. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. I have Breece Hall at 15. I think he can be pretty solid. I do think Justin Fields and his running ability will take some opportunities away from running backs. Throwing to running backs, as you mentioned, hasn't been a big part of his game, and they seem to want to mix in Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis. I think that cuts it down a little bit. I think he'll still be a high-end running back too, but be fine. Alvin Kamara, I have him at 14. He, much like David Montgomery, missed the last 3 games. They essentially shut him down. But through week 15, 14 games, where do you think he sat in fantasy scoring?
RB7.
He was running back 2, averaging more points per game than Jahmyr Gibbs. Not a ton more, but a few percentage points more. So, he's still by far and away the best, most reliable player they have. His team is horrendous, and that makes me nervous for him.
Why are you so low on him then?
Well, his team is horrendous, and that makes me nervous. He's a little bit older, but he's been great. I almost just feel like I hope he gets traded somewhere where he has a chance to be on a good team to compete, because New Orleans, I think, is going to be one of they'll either be the worst or one of the 2 or 3 worst teams in the NFL. And that's unfortunately been his lot for a while there. And he's such a good player. I would like to see him get a chance at greater success. I don't know that it's going to be in New Orleans, but that is my number 14. So we're going to do go 13 to 1. This is essentially the guys you would have in running back 1 range. So why don't you take it away?
So Alvin Kamara, 30 years old. That's scary. Scary.
I know, but all I'm saying, I was surprised
Still
too.
So
If you would have asked me before I looked, I would have said, he was fine. He actually finished as running back 9, averaging 19 points per game with missing the last 3 games. It was just he only finished 1 point behind James Cook, who played the whole season, who we talked about as being incredible. He only finished 7 points behind Kyron Williams, who also had a pretty impressive season. So, and that's with him missing 3 games. He was on a tear.
He was. All right, so I've got Kenneth Walker at 13. I'm notably higher on him than you are. I think Walker is such a good fit for that Clint Kubiak offense. While Zach Charbonnet isn't going away, I just think Walker provides the explosiveness in that offense. He's an underrated pass catcher. It will all come down to Walker's ability to stay healthy. I agree. He's had some injuries over the course of his career and missed some time. But we're getting close to the end of the contract here. It's time for Kenneth Walker to put up or shut up, and he's got the right system for it. At number 12, I've got Kyron Williams. Fresh off his extension, I am a noted Kyron Williams hater. I have trouble buying into 200-pound bell cow backs, which is what Kyron Williams is. That being said, since his rookie season, he has been out there and he's been putting up numbers. And I think that he's in a system that with a head coach that rides the running backs until they break. So he's going to be the feature back. I don't expect McVay to all of a sudden start going with a split workload. Williams is going to continue to get the lion's share of the workload until he is injured. And I'm not going to bet on him getting injured just yet. Number 11, I've got Jonathan Taylor. The talent is undeniable. But between injuries and shitty coaching and shitty quarterback play, I almost wonder what Jonathan Taylor did to the football gods to end up having to spend his career in Indianapolis, because they just don't seem to be able to do right by him on a year in, year out basis. But that being said, if they're not able to throw the ball and they've got to run it, they're going to run it with Jonathan Taylor. I still think Taylor gets a lot of carries. I think he'll push for 300 carries and has the potential. He could turn in the RB1 season. He's had some stellar years before. He's got to stay healthy, and he's got to have the offense produce well enough around him that they can't just stack the box and put 8 and 9 guys in the box for him to have to beat. Number 10, I got Chase Brown. Little nervous about Chase Brown. He played great last year, had a phenomenal year. Doesn't have anybody behind him. They cut Zach Moss. I'm not concerned with Samaje Perine. I like Taj Boyd as a prospect, but I'm not overly concerned that anybody is going to take a ton of volume away from him other than Joe Burrow. I think, would it surprise anybody if the Bengals, even though they're playing from behind, or maybe because they're playing from behind, throw the ball more than anybody else in the league? The Bengals might pass the ball 70% of the time. It could be that pass heavy when you got a stud like Joe Burrow. And while Chase Brown is a good pass catcher and will get his share of that workload, it could go wrong for me here having Chase Brown at 10. I do love the talent. I love the opportunity. I think the volume will be there. Number 9, I got Josh Jacobs. He's the workhorse in Green Bay. And if Jordan Love can't get his hand right, misses some time, re-injures it because he's trying to play with a damaged thumb that hasn't fully recovered, and Myles Garrett puts the hurt on him, something to that effect. In that now they're starting Malik Willis, which I don't think that's great for anybody's passing game. But Josh Jacobs, he's the clear lead back in Green Bay. Number 8, I got Bucky Irving. Terrible combine metrics. He's just one of those guys that just knows how to run the football. He's kind of David Montgomery-ish in that regard. Good pass catcher, good pass blocker, great lateral movement, can get skinny in the hole. He's not going to run away from people. Again, he's not going to turn a 10-yarder into a 90-yarder, but he'll turn a 7-yarder into a 15-yarder over and over and over again. And Rachaad White is not a serious threat to him rushing the ball, though White is a very, very good pass catcher. I like Sean Tucker as a backup, but I just don't think there's going to be I think they're going to ride Bucky Irving. Again, another one of these 200-pound backs, and maybe I'm just slow to evolve into the fact that right now the optimal size running back is about 196 to 204, and maybe I'm just slow to evolve. I'll have to do some introspection and see if I can figure that out. Christian McCaffrey at number 7. Speaking of things that could go wrong, he seems like he's primed to have another bounce back year. Is there anybody else in the league that could be comeback player of the year 3 times besides Joe Burrow? I don't know. He's shit the bed for us 3 of the last 5 years, but those 2 years, man, he is when he's right, he's the best all around back in the game. While there are some guys that could be in the running, he is definitely the cream of the crop. I'm a little nervous. He's getting older, several years of injuries mixed in with some phenomenal years. Number 6, I've got Devon Achane in Miami. I don't think their depth chart looks great behind them. There is some trepidation about, can Tua not bang his head on something and miss a bunch of time? I'm not 100% sure. I'm looking forward to the Zach Wilson experience or the Quinn Ewers experience if something should happen. Though I don't know how much worse
no
it
one
could
should
be.
be looking forward to the Quinn Ewers experience.
I don't know how much worse it could be than some of the backups they've had the last several years. But Devon Achane, great pass catcher, super explosive on the ground. While, again, I'm 5'9", 185-pound back, very reminiscent of Warwick Dunn for you old heads out there. And as long as he's the guy, they're going to keep giving him the ball. They're going to try to get him in space, and he's going to produce. Number 5, I've got King Henry. He does things that nobody else in the league can do. And at 6'3" and 250 pounds, I don't expect it to stop anytime soon, even with him being, 30, 31 years old. He's in the perfect offense for him that's ran by the perfect quarterback in Lamar Jackson. They're a heavy team, and Henry is going to just continue to do the things that he does, and that's run the ball, score touchdowns. Keaton Mitchell, who looked like he was coming to stake his claim to a little piece of the pie, is injured again. Justice Hill. There isn't a handcuff for Derrick Henry in Baltimore. If Henry gets injured, the running back position changes there. It becomes a split backfield with the guys on the team. So I'm looking forward to Henry. He may go for 2,000 yards again. It wouldn't. If it happened, is anybody going to go, oh, didn't see that coming? No, we're all going to be like, yeah, that tracks. Number 4, I'm going with the rookie Ashton Jeanty. Just feels like despite his 3 carries for -1 yards in the first game of the preseason, there's nobody there to press him. Sincere McCormick, Raheem Mostert, whoever.
You're not a Dylan Lobby stan?
Not a Dylan Lobby stan. I like Raheem Mostert as the backup, and I think that if something happened to Ashton Jeanty, I think Mostert would be the guy I'd want. But I don't think Mostert's going to get the volume that Ashton Jeanty is going to get. He's going to split time with Sincere McCormick. I like the overall offensive concept with Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers in the receiving game. Geno Smith, I think, is a competent quarterback, if not an amazing quarterback. I do think he's competent. Dante Thornton and Trent Tucker are a couple guys that can take the top off the defense and catch passes downfield and Jack Best seems like a chain mover. So it does, and they still got Michael Mayer, who on 26 other teams would be vying for a tight end one position in the fantasy rankings. So we may see a lot of 2 tight end stuff from them, with Bowers being a little further down the field and Mayer being a little bit shorter. At number 3, I got Jahmyr Gibbs. I kept trying to put Jahmyr Gibbs over Saquon Barkley, and I just couldn't. I want to believe he's going to be over Barkley. Barkley's a little bit older. Gibbs is a great pass catcher. He also has a nose for the end zone, dynamic runner, good inside runner, long speed for days. The reason I have Gibbs behind Barkley is that, I don't think Will Shipley poses the kind of threat to Saquon Barkley that David Montgomery does when it comes to opportunity share, does to Jahmyr Gibbs. So I ended up putting Barkley at 2. I had to take my dynasty hat off and just make sure, look, we're just talking this year. I know Barkley's coming off a phenomenal year, but pretty much everything is the same in Philadelphia. So why would we expect Barkley to not have another good year? And then at number 1, I got Bijan Robinson. I love Bijan Robinson. I think Michael Penix is the second coming of Kenny Stabler, and he's going to be bombing downfield to Drake London. It is a little bit of a bummer that Darnell Mooney got injured. I was kind of, Mooney is the real lid lifter there in Atlanta, and I think him and Penix could have been a lot of fun. Hopefully Mooney's back sooner rather than later. I think Kyle Pitts is going to be viable. I don't know how I'm defining viable at this point. I don't know that it's – I think I might have had him as a tight end 1. I think I had him at tight end 12.
We did. We both did. Those of us still hoping for that 5th-year breakout for Kyle Pitts are not that sad about Mooney being out. So
David Njoku was a late breakout.
Before I get to mine, we got a really important question, especially considering the big show tomorrow night, New Heights. Are Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift going to make it through the season? I assume that's what they're asking, because I can, for the life of me, cannot think of another combination of players. Packer Backer says he thinks that he's going to propose in the playoffs. That's certainly possible. I do think they're going to make it. I don't regularly listen to Travis Kelce's podcast because, as a Broncos fan, I like to expose myself to the Chiefs as little as possible, which is what makes it hurtful that there's a Chiefs football documentary series coming out tomorrow, because it puts me in a challenging position of I like to watch all football documentaries, but I really don't want anything celebrating the Chiefs, so I'll be internally at war with myself. But as soon as I saw the trailer for that episode of New Heights, I knew I was going to be watching it.
So, yes, I think they're going to make it through the season. I expect they're going to get married, and I like the scenario of proposing in the playoffs. That's assuming they make the playoffs. And
I just don't think a proposal or their relationship is going to be tied to football. Everybody has been predicting him to propose after a Super Bowl. I just don't think it's that. I think that would be too cheesy at this point. I don't think it's going to happen at a game.
Yeah, I don't know that it's going to happen at a game. I wouldn't be surprised if it did. I'd be like, whatever. But I think they have a solid relationship. I think they've both spent time. This isn't their first relationship. They've had lots of chances to make mistakes and figure out what they need out of a relationship, how to communicate it. And it seems like they are,
I actually did watch that. As much as I don't like the Chiefs, my wife is a huge Hallmark Christmas movie, and this was one of the Hallmark Christmas movie premieres last year that featured Donna Kelsey. And so I did spend a Saturday night watching an original Hallmark Christmas movie about the Kansas City Chiefs. So you never know. Yeah. As for my top 13, I have Devon Achan at number 13. Look, last year he was helped a lot by short passing. I have questions about whether that passing volume is there. I also have questions, as I've mentioned a few times, about the Dolphins in general. I still think he's a good player. I still think he's going to be around running back 1 value. I just don't know that he's going to be where he was last year, which was running back 6, because he got 78 passes. But that was largely due to the fact that it was constant dump offs, probably because they had all those weird backups. I forgot about all that. It was constant dump offs to him and Jonnu Smith. Those guys combined for 160 something receptions last year, and Jalen Waddle had less than 50, if I recall. So I just think that was way out of proportion. I don't know if that happens again. At 12, I have James Cook. I was encouraged to see him back out there. I think ultimately they get something done, and I think he is still probably one of the more dynamic playmakers they have on offense outside of Josh Allen. They haven't really invested heavily in getting somebody that blows your socks off in the passing game. I have Bucky Irving at 11. I think he was great last year. I think he's going to be great this year again. I think he would probably get even more volume if they didn't have such a darn good passing offense. But he showed last year that, a lot of us thought, well, Bucky's going to take the groundwork, but Rachaad White will still be the receiving back. Bucky Irving looked just as dynamic catching the ball as Rachaad White, so there's really no reason to be pulling them off. I think Rachaad White is just going to be a change of pace, mix-in guy. Chase Brown, I have at 10. He was running back 10 last year. They obviously have a lot of confidence in him. He's another guy that I think the main threat to his volume, there's a running back on this list who is the main threat to receiving volume for his team. I think the main threat for Bucky Irving and Chase Brown's volume is the fact that they have such a robust passing game, because they're going to be pumping it out there to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and the 95 tight ends that they now have on that roster. I have Kyren Williams at running back 9. I think he's been really solid. They really like him. He fits what they're trying to do. That 3-year extension makes me feel even better about him for Dynasty as well. I have Josh Jacobs at 8. He was great last year. I think he fits what they want to do in I almost said Mike McCarthy, but it's it's Matt LaFleur. God, Mike McCarthy. That would be an unwelcome blast from the past for Green Bay Packers. That's what Matt LaFleur wants to do there on offense. I think he is a great fit in that offense. I have McCaffrey at 7. Christian McCaffrey, a lot of the talk about the struggles and the injuries and the questions about the 49ers receiving core has been, well, we have George and Christian to take care of a lot of that. I mean, there are a lot of projections of McCaffrey going back to 70 to 75 receptions, along with 1,000 to 1,200 yards on the ground. I think that would be music to my ears on all the teams that I have him rostered. I have Jonathan Taylor at 6. His passing game, it's hard to imagine that it'd be worse this year than it was last year when it was a dumpster fire. He had more than 300 carries last year. He had more than 1,400 yards, 11 touchdowns. On a points per game basis, he was running back 7 last year, averaging 17.5 points per game. I think he is rock solid as long as he's healthy. I have him out there. I have Derrick Henry at 5. I think enough said. That was another great fit. We had a couple of just great free agency signings to fit what teams were wanting to do last year. Jacobs, Henry, Saquon, really dynamic players going to dynamic spots. I have Ashton Jeanty at 4, just like you. It was an inauspicious start, but I think it was a bit of Pete Carroll trolling people, which he sort of admitted to after the game, saying that they weren't going to show anyone what they wanted to do on offense with their best players. That is an old school coaching kind of deal. So I'm not reading a lot into that. People wanted to panic right away. 3 carries in a sort of meaningless first preseason game is not enough to get my motor going. I have Bijan Robinson at 3. I think he's great. In Dynasty, I have him as running back 1, but I'm not as high on Atlanta's offense, I think, as you are. I'm not as high on Michael Penix as you are. I don't know that Atlanta's better than they were last year. And Bijan Robinson was great, but he was still running back 3 last year, still a tick below the 2 guys I have above him, which I have Saquon at 2 and Jahmyr Gibbs at 1. And I think those guys are great. They're great fits in their offense. They're great parts of the passing game. They're great on the ground. And I think they're going to be great again. But honestly, if you have any of those 3, if you had them in any order, I wouldn't really be surprised. And if you have any of those 3, you're feeling great. If you have 2 of those 3, I mean, God bless you. You probably won last year, and you're probably feeling pretty good about this year.
I mean, the way it's going right now, the potential is there to be able to get Saquon Barkley and Bijan, not Barkley, who am I thinking? Jonathan Taylor and one of the other 3, because Taylor's going late in the second. It's crazy if you wanted to start with those 2 guys.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of teams where I have, I used to probably 7 or 8 years ago when you and I first got together, I was a pretty dyed-in-the-wool 0 RB player, and I didn't enjoy my life that much. So steadily over time, I've really kind of come around. I wouldn't say I'm like the most running back heavy, but I do tend to try to at least have one good anchor back on a team. And I believe I have, in our Dynasty League, I believe I paired Jonathan Taylor and Jahmyr Gibbs, and that's how I won last year. I think I had Taylor, Gibbs, and Joe Burrow, if I recall. And that's how I ended up winning, and that's the spine of my hopes and dreams for this season as well. So we'll see. I'm pretty sure I had Jonnu Smith. That didn't hurt me at all because we have tight end premium. But I still have Kelsey, and Dalton Kincaid needs to get his ass in gear, and that'll help me again this year. But before we get out of here, let's finish by talking about running backs. Who is the biggest riser in this top half group for you?
So for me, it's a couple of young guys. I didn't have a ton of expectations for Bucky Irving last year or even Chase Brown. And so having Irving at 9 and Brown, or 8 and Brown at 10, both of those guys kind of much higher. I don't think I had them in my top 25 last year.
Yeah, Bucky Irving is really a great one. I did not have a lot of hopes or a lot of thoughts for him and Chase Brown. I think last year at this time, I thought Zach Moss was going to have some kind of a showing. Zach Moss was one of my sleepers, and it put me to sleep. That actually did screw me.
They wanted him to, and he started.
I know, and I followed my own advice, and I went and pinned some of my team hopes. I think I traded for Gibbs, and that's how I won, because I think I had Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor, and I thought, I'm just going to slow roll all these people. And then I watched Zach Moss, and I was like, Joe Bluth, I've made a horrible mistake. That's probably why I have no picks in our Dynasty League, but, you got to do what you got to do if you can win. Who is the biggest faller?
The biggest faller for me is probably James Cook. I've got him down at 25. I just am so skeptical about the repeating of the touchdown production. And I think he's a good back. I think they've shown they want to use all 3 backs. They're still going to use Josh Allen to run the ball some. And that 18 touchdowns, I just don't see it as being repeatable.
I think we pride ourselves on honesty and accountability here, and I'm looking at my redraft rankings from when we did this show in 2024, and I had Zamir White at running back 18. he would not be in my top 100 this year. I also had Travis Etienne up at 10. He had a great 2023, and they had picked up his fifth-year option, and I thought we were going to see him build on that, and the floor kind of fell out, and I don't have a good feeling about him this year. He's not in my top 25 anymore. He's down in the 30s. So those are a couple of ones that I look back on from last year, and I'm like, who is your biggest question in this top 25?
Oh, this top 25 is rife with questions. You've got the Madden curse with Saquon Barkley. That's always nerve-wracking when you're drafting somebody at 102, 103, 104. The questions for me mostly, CMC, is he going to stay healthy? Does he still have it if he is healthy? He's a question mark. He's either going to be a league winner because you're picking him at 108, 109, 110 right now. He's kind of going the end of the first round. And back there, it's like you're looking at running backs, and it's like the potential he brings to the table is scary in a good and bad way. Devon Achane, again, 185-pound feature back on a team that could completely implode. It could go any kind of directions. And then the last one for me is Kenneth Walker. I love the talent. I've got him at RB13. I think he fits that scheme to a T. It's like, when Derrick Henry went to Baltimore, you're like, this is a perfect match. And I think that Seattle and Clint Kubiak is a perfect match for Kenneth Walker. However, the injury history can be disconcerting. Would I draft him at RB13? Depends on how many teams I'm drafting. If I had one league and I'm building my team, I don't know if I'd have the balls to take Kenneth Walker as the RB13.
I'm gonna say it is, the ones you're talking about, definitely some questions. I mentioned with Kamara and Jonathan Taylor, it's not the talent, but the offense is not great around them, and that can hold you back. But I'm going to say Ashton Jeanty, and it has nothing to do with that preseason 3 carries. But we're very excited about him. I think he has top 5 upside, but the Raiders have disappointed us in fantasy terms, and probably have disappointed you if you're a fan. Many
the Raiders are the whiskey dick of fantasy prospects.
Yeah, and so many balls are in the air with them trying to shift and going. And I think he's their most talented back. There's a reason he was 101 in all formats for us in rookie drafts. But if he rolls out and has an RB23 season, that would be a good rookie year, but it would be a massive disappointment from what we're all kind of penciling him in as. So
yeah, it's like Marvin
Harrison. The bar
is
so high, anything that comes out of there. Yeah. Why, well, the bar is just so high. That makes me a little nervous. So I'm going to ask you to go wild with the last one. Who is somebody not in your 25 that if everything broke right could just pop up there and have a top 12 season? Because we saw that last year. Chase Brown finishing as RB10, Bucky Irving kind of coming out of nowhere. Who's a guy that you think could come out of nowhere and have a top 12 season?
So from out of nowhere, I'm gonna stick in my top 50. But from out of nowhere, I'm going to go with Quinshon Judkins because there's so many questions. But if he plays, he's going to be the RB1 in Cleveland. He's going to get the volume. They want to run a play action offense. It's going to, Stefanski's kind of conservative in that fashion. And he's a guy he's built to carry the ball 20 times a game, and he's an adequate pass catcher. but he's got to get on the field.
And I'm going to go with this college teammate, Travion Henderson. You were a little higher than I was. I just, the Josh McDaniels of it all, Ramondre Stevenson's still there. They were still using Antonio Gibson in the preseason. Those kind of things making you nervous. But if they coalesced around him, I think he is a dynamic playmaker. And I think this offense is going to be better. And it would not be, we had one of those seasons where when they really focused and dialed down and gave the ball to Ramondre both as a receiver and as a runner, he was fantasy gold. I think Henderson has the talent to be even have a higher upside than that, and that would not be a shock. It'd probably be a welcome surprise, welcome addition for people that took him high in the draft as well.
It would be.
Well, that'll do it for us today, and that'll be a wrap for the week. We'll be back next Tuesday starting wide receivers. That's the last position to go through. We are getting ever closer to the season. If you're looking for some things to fill your time, we are starting week 2 of the preseason starts on Thursday, which should be great. But there are actually a couple of fun things. We name checked it, but the New Heights podcast, Taylor Swift and the two Kelsey brothers tomorrow. Thursday, the Chiefs Kingdom streams on Disney Plus and Hulu. That is a reality series that is following the Kansas City Chiefs. Netflix has Jerry Jones, the Gambler and the Cowboy, or I think it's called America's Team, the Gambler and the Cowboy, about Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, that drops on Tuesday. That has gotten a lot of interesting buzz from people in the NFL industry that have seen advanced copies. And of course, tonight, Hard Knocks with the Buffalo Bills. I enjoyed episode 1. I had a lot of fun with it. I think the Bills will be a fun team to follow. We will. That one is live at 8 Eastern or at 9 Eastern on HBO, and we'll be streaming on Max. So just a few. There's a lot of fun ancillary football content that's out there right now. If you're a college person, Netflix has SEC. It's like SEC, it's all in the game. They followed all the SEC teams during the 2024 season. I'm kind of a nut for these sports documentaries, especially as we get close to football. It gets me excited since we don't have as many meaningful games. But there are a lot of preseason games going to be out Thursday, Friday, Saturday. There's a couple on Sunday. There is a Monday night football game this week. I know it's the Bengals and somebody. You can watch football pretty much every day. But if that's not enough for you, Dennis, what can the people do?
You know what will get you through those mundane moments at work? You pop that earbud in your ear. You go to your favorite podcast platform, hit that search bar, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. We're going to drop into your feed twice a week. And we've got quite a backlog of episodes you can listen to. I just want to shout out and say thanks to Dan. I'm pretty sure Packers is our old friend Dan.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the week and a great weekend. We'll be back on Tuesday talking wide receivers, which if you thought running backs was fun, wide receivers probably more fun because of the value and the excitement that you can have of some of those guys between 50 and 26. Not like running backs where you're just hoping somebody gives you 5 points a game. These guys could give you some good points. Wide receiver, a fun, deep position. So that'll be fun. We'll talk about that next week. Until then, enjoy as much football content as you can possibly find.